A pop music video from 1984 features Alex, a singer and keyboardist, and his fellow band member, Colin. The song, Pop Goes My Heart, is an upbeat and bouncy electronic pop tune typical of the era. It's part of a pitch for a television show called Battle of the 80s as Beans, which highlights the huge success Colin enjoyed after the band split, and the relative obscurity into which Alex has faded. A business exec pauses the preview and asks Alex, sitting in front of him, what he thinks. Alex shrugs and says he's a happy has-been, that he doesn't mind applying the term to himself because it takes the pressure off and nobody will ever expect anything from him again. The exec misses the sarcasm and goes on to explain the details of the proposed show, but Alex is confused as they can't promise that he'll get to sing anything. He asks what they'll be doing if not singing, and the exec tells him that it's boxing. He has to fight the other acts and only the winner will be allowed to sing. Alex is visibly much less enthusiastic and bows out of the meeting. He heads home to his manager, who apologizes profusely for the mistake, explaining that nobody ever mentioned anything about boxing. Alex takes everything in good humor, laughing at the mistake and telling him not to worry. His manager tells him that he's had a call from the agent of Cora Corman, the most popular superstar in the world, and apparently she's a huge fan of pop, and wants to meet Alex to discuss some sort of collaboration. At that moment, the buzzer sounds and the doorman explains someone called Sophie is there to do his plants. Alex is perplexed, as usually Jane does them, but he shrugs and tells the doorman to let her up anyway. Then he returns to the conversation, but his manager, distracted, asks why he has plants. He explains that he's heard plants make women feel more comfortable in an apartment, so he has someone to maintain them for him. His manager asks if it's true and laments that perhaps if he'd known, his wife wouldn't have left him. Alex is unconvinced. Sophie enters the apartment, talking a mile a minute, explaining that Jane should have sent him a message explaining her presence, and talking about her last appointment with an old German man who screamed at her. All the while she is putting her bag, scarf, and coat on the counter and Alex is politely removing them and hanging them up for her. He barely gets a moment to speak, but is smiling, clearly enjoying Sophie's energy. She catches sight of the manager, who introduces himself as Chris Riley, and then sets about doing the plants while they carry on their conversation. Alex turns back to Chris and asks him for the pros and cons of meeting Cora. There's really no reason not to go, but she wants to meet that night, so Alex doesn't have long to prepare. Just then, Sophie catches herself on a cactus, yelping in pain, and asks if Alex has any antibiotic cream. He replies that he doesn't. With a long-winded explanation about how she's prone to illness, she grabs her stuff, talking all the time, promises to come back later, and leaves both men standing dumbfounded. Chris shakes his head and advises Alex not to give her a key. That night, they meet Cora after she finishes shooting a music video. She's so happy to meet Alex, and explains that one of the songs he wrote for Pop got her through her parents' divorce as a child. She feels a really deep connection to his music and she wants her fans to experience the same thing. She recently broke up with her boyfriend, and she wants a new song called A Way Back Into Love, which she wants him to write for her. But it needs to be done by Friday to be included on her album, and in 2 weeks, she wants to perform with him at Madison Square Garden. Alex is shocked at the timeframes, but Cora's manager reassures him that while he's their favorite, they have several other artists working on it as a backup, in case he can't do it in time. Cora smiles and says it's destiny. Out in the street, Alex is flabbergasted, proclaiming that it's impossible to finish a song in such a short time. Chris, however, says that they really need this opportunity to work out, because it's been 15 years since he was relevant, and their usual set of tours and gigs that keep him going have been dropping off one by one. He needs to find a way back into the scene, and this is his shot. Despite his understanding of the situation, Alex still complains, claiming that he hasn't written a song in 10 years, and he'll need a lyricist, and nothing he's ever written has worked out since Colin did his lyrics. Chris waves away his concerns, and tells him to get started and he'll bring in someone he's got connections with. It turns out the guy who Chris hires, though, is not vibing with Alex at all, and Alex's more classical piano style doesn't mesh well with the death metal lyrics he's written. They're struggling to work together when Sophie returns to finish off the plants. Alex jokes with her that they managed to save her hand, and she laughs in embarrassment and begins talking nonstop again, putting her things on top of the piano as he delicately removes them and hangs them up. She heads off into the kitchen and the lyricist, Greg, stares after her, commenting on her appearance. Alex, who hasn't really thought much about it because of her whirlwind of a personality, nods thoughtfully and tries to get back to the song. The lyrics are really not working, try as they might. Sophie begins humming to herself in the background, making up absent-minded lyrics of her own, and Alex is startled. He picks up on it immediately, and when Greg challenges her to finish the song, she comes up with a beautiful verse on the spot. Alex is thoroughly impressed as her poetic style is much more similarly matched to his own than Greg's is. Greg snorts, saying it's a waste of time, and leaves. Sophie apologizes for interfering, saying she has absolutely no filter, and she shouldn't have said anything. Alex isn't worried at all though, aware that she has a hidden talent. He asks her if she's ever heard of Pop, and she laughs about how her sister loved them, but she thought they were ridiculous, before realizing that Alex was one of the band. He's not insulted, though, and asks her if she'll write some lyrics for him. She's terrified at the idea and claims she's not a lyricist, barreling off about having to babysit her sister's kids and positively fleeing the apartment. He chases after her, determined, telling her he's writing a song for Cora Corman and he'll be at the Hilton tonight if she changes her mind. Sophie is babysitting when her sister Rhonda returns, and the kids run giggling off to bed. Sophie tells her that she met Alex Fletcher earlier that day, and Rhonda goes into shock, unable to believe that Sophie met one of her heroes. Sophie mentions the Hilton and her sister grabs her arm, hysterical, yelling to her husband that she's going out, and drags her out of the apartment. Sophie shakes her head, saying it wasn't the point of the story, but follows her. Alex is performing for a high school reunion when the pair arrive. Rhonda presses her bag onto Sophie and barges her way to the front of the crowd, grinning at Alex and screaming in delight. Sophie struggles to hold back her grin at her sister's behavior. Alex is dancing on stage and evidently injures his back, but manages to finish the performance regardless, waving at the crowd and grinning as he limps backstage. Afterwards, he extricates himself from the gaggle of women to find Sophie and her sister waiting for him at the bar. Sophie introduces Rhonda, who is utterly starstruck, and asks to get a photo with Alex. He agrees and Rhonda cuddles up beside him, ready for the picture, but Sophie distracts everyone by apologizing for running out on him earlier. Chris asks for context, and Alex explains what happened that afternoon. Sophie asks why Alex can't just write the lyrics himself, and he gives an example of a terrible rhyme he once tried to make, which she turns into another really good verse. Even Chris is impressed. Alex asks again for her help, everyone ignoring Rhonda, who is begging for anyone to take their picture, but Sophie declines. Determined not to give up, Alex goes to Sophie's workplace and begs her for 5 minutes of her time. She protests that she can't write a song, but reluctantly agrees to go with him, and he takes her to the piano store nearby, where he plays some bars which he set to the verse she came up with on the spot last night. She's enamored with the melody, smiling, and he promises her that she's a born lyricist, and he knows she's capable of doing it. For the first time, she starts to believe that maybe she actually is. Back at Alex's place, they're brainstorming where to start. Sophie's struggling for inspiration, and the whole day passes before she comes up with anything. Alex is absent-mindedly playing the piano while he waits. Sophie's distracted, and he frustratedly says that it doesn't have to be perfect, just something that he can put on top of the melody. She gets annoyed, explaining that the music is important, but the lyrics are just as important, because they're the story behind the song, how the listener connects to the music. She suggests going for a walk to clear their minds, and although Alex doesn't understand the point of it, very aware they're pressed for time, he's willing to agree to anything that will get her inspired. She asks why Pop split up, and he tells her about how Colin stole the last 3 songs he wrote and put them on his first solo album, which made him a worldwide star. He tells her he dealt with it by releasing his own solo album, and shows her a copy that's been at his local store for 6 years. He made a mark on the back of it, and he checks every week, just for fun. It was poorly received critically, because he's not made to make music solo. So, now, he does cruises, reunions, state fairs, and other events with older clientele who remember his glory days. Sophie feels sad that he never found success, and says she knows how it feels to go through life with a shadow overhead. Then, suddenly, she realizes that she's written her first lyric. The next morning, Sophie insists on getting breakfast before they keep working. Alex takes her out to a place he knows nearby, still trying to think of lyrics as they walk. Sophie suddenly stops and shrinks back into the doorway of a bookstore, trying to avoid someone she sees inside. Alex stops, concerned, asking her what's wrong and saying that it's in his interests to make sure she's okay because they have 36 hours to finish this song. Appreciating his bluntness, Sophie gives in and explains that the best-selling book, Sally Michaels, in the front of the store, is about her. Over coffee, she tells him how she signed up for a writing class and fell in love with the teacher. They had an exciting relationship for almost a year before his fiancée returned from a year abroad and found them together. She broke it off with him immediately and never spoke to him again. However, not long after, he brought out his new novel, which was a bestseller, The Story of Sally Michaels, the student who seduces her teacher and ruins his life. Since then, she's been unable to pick up a pen without being haunted by the words he wrote about her. She still has feelings for him, despite everything, and she can't bear that he used her. Alex is sympathetic to her plight, agreeing that he'd be very upset if one of his musical heroes had told him he was a poor songwriter, but he says he wouldn't let it stop him. He'd get depressed for a long time, then write a song about how depressed he was, release it and become a hit again. If he let his creativity run out because of something someone said to him, it'd only be letting them win. Sophie feels better after talking to him, and smiles while sipping her coffee, beginning to actually like him a lot more than before. At the lobby of Alex's building, they're trialing the lyrics on a very confused doorman, who's looking between them as they argue over which words she's written on the notepad. Upstairs, she drags a chair over to the piano, saying she can't write from across the room. They rearrange the whole apartment so that both of them can work close to each other, to Alex's consternation. However, the two are getting along well now, laughing together as they work. Sophie makes coffee in the kitchen as they pull an all-nighter. They're deciding on how the song should sound, and Sophie's not a fan of some of his chords, just as he's begging her to change some of the lyrics. He expresses that it really doesn't need to be perfect. They're not writing Beethoven's next symphony, it just has to be good enough. Eventually, they come up with a final version which they sing to the doorman, and he explains he's tone deaf. It's deadline time, and Alex is recording the guitar and piano sections while Sophie finishes off the final lyrics. He puts the mic in front of her and asks her to sing the woman's part just for the test track. They stand together by the mic, singing the soulful and beautiful lyrics they've composed together over his musical track. Sophie's really nervous at first, but eventually really gets into it, having a fun time singing with Alex. They get a taxi across town at the last possible minute, and deliver the CD to Cora's agent as she's about to step into the helicopter. She listens to it on a Walkman, ignoring his protests. Alex is feeling very awkward as Cora listens in silence with her eyes closed, making no reaction. When the song is over, she steps forward and hugs both of them without a word, then says emotionally that this is the song she's been waiting for. Sophie and Alex cheer in delight as she flies away, and Alex hugs her, lifting her up and planting a huge kiss on her cheek. They go out to dinner with Chris and his wife Gloria to celebrate, but Sophie's ex-teacher, Sloane, arrives at the bar. Sophie runs away to hide in the toilets, resisting all Alex's attempts to cheer her up through the door. She reluctantly opens up and lets him inside, telling him the speech she wrote in her head, that she told herself she'd say to Sloane if she ever saw him, but she'd never have the courage to actually do it. Alex encourages her, saying she has to say it, that now is the time. She just wrote a song for Cora Corman. Nervous, Sophie argues that she can't, that after their long songwriting spree she hasn't even had a chance to clean up. Alex fetches Gloria from the table, who agrees to swap clothes with Sophie, lending her the gorgeous red evening dress she came in. It fits her beautifully, and Alex can't take his eyes off her. They approach Sloane at the bar and Sophie taps Sloane on the shoulder. He's surprised and happy to see her, and asks her how she's doing. She's completely tongue-tied, letting him talk his way around her, and can't find the words to say how she really feels. Sloane tells her he's going to make a film out of Sally Michaels, that he's just finished writing a script for it. He then leaves her at the bar as he and his party head to their table. Sophie is dumbstruck and distraught at the news, and Alex takes over. He goes to Sloane's table, and the man takes him to the side and tells him that Sophie was the one who started everything between them because she wanted to get published, so she's not the innocent one here. Infuriated, Alex escalates things to defend her, and the two men end up in a scuffle. Sophie returns with him to his apartment, lamenting that she couldn't say what she needed to and that somehow Sloane still has this inexplicable power over her. Alex is fed up by now, and loudly proclaims that Sloane is a jerk and the reason she still feels the way she does is because she's scared to step out from under Sally Michaels' shadow and stand on her own 2 feet. Sophie is shocked by his honesty and stops talking, actually surprised at his insight. He pauses, then carries on, revealing that he thinks she's talented and unique and shouldn't let anyone hold her back, least of all someone like that. Touched, Sophie sits down beside him, holding an ice pack to his face where Sloane bruised it. She tells him he was amazing, showing her gratitude for him defending her. He makes a joke that the ice pack is on the wrong side of his face, and she surprises him by taking it away and kissing his cheek softly. When she tries to reapply it to the other side, he meets her gaze, pushing her hand away and brushing her lips with his thumb. The tension builds, Alex looking for permission in her eyes, and then he leans in and claims her. It quickly turns passionate and they fall to the couch, hands all over each other's bodies. The next morning, they are naked in Alex's living room, sleeping together under the piano. He wakes up to the sound of the phone and bangs his head as he answers the call, stepping outside so he doesn't wake Sophie. It's Chris. He's reminding him that he has a show at 2 p.m. that day and checking he's ready. Alex tells him he slept with Sophie the previous night, and Chris is shocked, at first admonishing him but then asking him if he should be happy for him. Alex hears Sophie bang her head on the piano, realizes she's up, and hangs up the call. He tells her awkwardly that he would invite her to stay, but he's got a show to do at Adventureland Amusement Park. She says she doesn't have anything on that day, and he invites her to come with him. She waits backstage, jamming with Chris. Alex comes off stage and asks if he really has to do an encore, that the kids don't even know the music and nobody really wants to see him, and Chris tells him it's in the contract. Sophie interrupts, telling him his music is great. She hasn't heard most of the songs before, but she really likes them. They're well written and he should be proud to be singing them. He looks over at her, unsure whether she's just trying to make him feel better, but she's earnest and he reluctantly smiles, accepting the praise and agreeing to go back on. She smiles and watches him as he goes back on stage, enjoying seeing him have fun, and Chris mouths a thank you. Sophie walks into the gathered audience and waves a lighter in imitation of a rock concert, and he laughs, his eyes meeting her across the crowd. They're driving back when Sophie remembers she was supposed to be at Rhonda's for dinner, and begs Alex to go with her, so her sister won't yell at her for being late. He agrees, wanting to spend more time with her. At dinner, Rhonda's fawning over Alex and the kids are asking for tickets to the concert when Chris calls with news. Apparently Cora wants to meet them the following day at the studio to work on the song. Sophie is nervous, and Alex teases her saying she's got her worried eyes, prompting a shy laugh and a blush. Rhonda looks from one to the other with her eyebrows raised, cottoning on that there's something between the two. Rhonda warns Sophie to be careful if she's falling for Alex, to make sure he's passionate about her. Sophie denies having feelings for him, but lets slip accidentally on purpose that they slept together already. Rhonda says she'll know if he really has feelings for her when he does something extraordinary. Despite her sister's warning, Sophie finds herself watching Alex on the kids' dance mat, smiling as she can't keep her eyes off him. Outside Rhonda's apartment, they say goodnight, both awkwardly unsure of how to leave things. Alex offers to pick her up on the way to Cora's the next day, and they share a parting kiss, both stopping to look back at each other before they turn the corner. Alex gets into bed that night reading a copy of the Sally Michaels book, and Sophie is listening to Alex's solo album which she bought from the store. As it turns out, Cora has completely changed the song Alex wrote. Alex flatters her, despite hating it, knowing that he needs this deal and he can't get emotional over it. Sophie, though, is not used to the industry and is about to speak her mind. But Alex stops her. Cora says she wants one more verse, because it feels like the song's not finished yet, then invites them both to the opening party for the song's debut. After Cora leaves, Sophie rants to Alex that she destroyed their song, and says she's going to go to the party and tell her how she really feels about it. Alex, desperate, shouts at her that she's uninvited and he won't go with her, but she ignores him, getting in a cab, headstrong and refusing to back down. Alex goes to the party in the end, realizes he knows absolutely no one there, and looks for Chris. Sophie arrives not long afterwards, and Cora is pleased to see them, dragging her up to the roof. Sophie tries to tell her that she doesn't like the song, despite Alex's fumbled attempts to prevent it. But Cora doesn't listen, thanking her for her honesty but saying she likes the new version better, and she wants to dance. Sophie and Alex argue after Cora leaves them, Sophie telling him he doesn't stand up for himself enough. She admits that she bought his album and the music isn't good because it's soulless. He was trying so hard to be successful that he lost his passion. He counters her by saying that in the end, you can't care about music because it's all just about the money. He wishes everything in life was so simple, because caring makes things too complicated. He doesn't seem to realize what he said until he sees her shocked expression, taking his words to heart and believing that he thinks what happened between them didn't mean anything. They share a cab back from the party to work on the last verse at Alex's. The atmosphere between them is nothing like it has been before, because Sophie is still angry at him. She decides she can't do it. She wants to help, but she can't write when she feels this way. Alex begs her to come up with just 4 lines, but she grabs her stuff, saying she can't. Afraid he's going to lose the job, he finally explodes, all the pent-up frustration of dealing with her insecurities coming to a head. He says she's just like Sally Michaels, that he bought the book hoping to tell her Sloane was wrong, but actually he had her completely pegged. Devastated, Sophie walks out without a word, and Alex is left alone. Alex turns up at the studio, ready to record his half of the song, with a half-hearted verse he's written himself. Cora assuages his worries, though, saying that Sophie sent her the lyrics that morning and they are absolutely perfect, and he lets her believe he knew all about it. Cora sings the new verse, and Alex is taken aback, realizing that Sophie's written it about him after their argument, using his words about the music business. He goes to her work to find her and apologize, and is met with a frosty reception. Sophie has told Rhonda about their fight. He follows Sophie into the back where she tells him she's going to move to Florida and manage the new branch of Rhonda's shop. He's heartbroken that she's going to leave, but can't find the words to say so, chickening out at the last minute, and telling her he needs her to compose music with him. She shakes her head, turning him down, saying that it's not a good idea. She thinks he doesn't care, but he can't find the words to say anything more, and walks away. Both are unhappy without each other. Alex browses Sophie's old poetry on the internet, which was published when she was small, and Sophie throws herself into writing a new marketing campaign for the shop. Alex tries to move his living room back to the way it was, but can't manage the piano alone. On the night of the concert, Sophie agrees to go so that they don't disappoint the children. Rhonda stops her outside and peps her up. Sophie admits she doesn't know how she's going to go inside and face him. Cora introduces a brand new song, but omits to mention Sophie's name as a writer. Sophie is humiliated, getting up and saying she'll return when the song's over. But Alex gets up on stage and begins to play and sing, and it's a completely different song, one that's about her. He's come up with all the lyrics from the heart and written it overnight. She stops on her way out, shocked and touched, and listens to the whole thing with tears filling her eyes. It's a love song about how afraid he was to reach out and tell her how he feels, and begging her not to give up on him. When it's over, she rushes backstage, led in by Cora's manager, and goes to find Alex. He's hesitant, not sure what she thought of it, but she grins and approaches him slowly, ready to forgive him. He takes her face in his hands, ready to kiss her, but before he can, the lights dim, the cue for a way back into love. Cora proudly announces the music and lyrics are by Alex Fletcher and Sophie Fisher, and Rhonda's children cheer loudly. The music starts up slowly, and Sophie gasps as she realizes it's the original version. Alex tells her he managed to talk Cora out of the changes by saying it might help him win her back. He goes up on stage to sing, and the song's a hit with the crowd. But Alex leaves the stage before it's over, picking Sophie up and kissing her soundly as Cora watches, smiles, and finishes the last few lines.